You never thought dandelions could be merciless. Letty believed that 100%. And that same belief had found a special place in her brain despite the stabbing pain that swallowed her ankle. Though each step felt like thorns in her soul, she kept the composure intact and her vision steady, her breaths in rhythm with her feet in strides. Like a highly depleted Olympian who never knew defeat, her eyes burned with sweat and tears like her bronze skin kissed by the midday sun. Her mind too frantic to think or care about anything, even when she felt like a thousand needles pricked her skin, she took a step forward. Only God knew where this could go, she thought, watching the man's back and two rifles resting on his shoulders. Another survivor from another lost group, she nodded. Flashing empty on her face, she swelled her head in all directions, hovering her sight across the sea of trees, because it was the only thing she could do to keep an eye on the monsters, because in her mind one thing was crystal clear: he was a warrior, she was a burden. Unarmed, all she had was strategy without any martial arts know-how. She was sure she didn't want to get stuck in the thick forest in the middle of the night. She could barely lift a leg and open her eyes to see a far distance, let alone fight, with only clothes and journals in her backpack. With her weight doubling from last year, getting involved with physical combat wasn't an option. If she were to fight, her strength was nowhere against the dandelions. Definitely not with injury. When she couldn't move a step, she stopped and lamented, mentally preparing herself for the men's argument. Because she knew there was no way for them to stop, not until they could find a safe place to stay, not in the middle of the forest. But the pain had conquered her logic and went beyond understanding. Can we stop here? Oh my God, she told herself, wiping the sweat on her forehead with her forearm. She wished to spend another hour underneath a shade. If lucky, a bed would be great. A luxury for the rest of the night before moving on to the next destination. It would also be cool if they could find shelters filled with food. Besides, she had to eat, and they hadn't eaten anything decent for days. Her stomach already roared like a hungry lion in famished Africa, plus she desperately needed sleep, or at least a few hours to mourn for what she'd lost: friends, family, and places that bear her childhood memories. Almost a week after this hysteria began, the whole town felt, the nation in a total blackout. She hadn't had the time to grieve, not even to cry out loud. For the first time, Mother Earth was silent. Within a week, as if modern technology had skipped this timeline. No radio signals, no broadcasting, no communications, whatever these deadlines were, and whoever was responsible for this, the sure had planned it well enough to destroy the greatest country in the world in a single week without dropping a single look on the land. Buildings were left unscathed. Roads eerily quiet, abandoned cars zigzagged the bridges. It was as if the UAPs conquered the world and kidnapped the entire population, then left them somewhere in the galaxy for good. You know, we can't. We're still miles away from the next part of the town. He dipped his eyes on her ankle and clucked, sighing in disappointment, frustrated about the unplanned pause. His eyebrows curled and met in the middle. Can you still walk? I can, but barely, she shuddered. He bent his knees and grabbed her leg to look closely at the injury. You need painkillers. Maybe we could find some meds along the way. But for now, we should go. We can't stay here. Out of the blue, he paused, holding his breath, slowly resting her leg on the ground. He stiffened for a second before he lifted a rifle in position. As he rose, studying him, she jolted, feeling the uncomfortable tingles and sensations wrap around her body. What is it? Her gut narrowed, her inside lurched as panic grew. With the remainder of her strength, she pushed herself to get up. Gritting her teeth, groaning, almost screaming in pain, she wished she could cry, but no, she can't be a whiny baby now. Hey, are they around? Do you see them? He shook his head and rubbed his scarlet eyes down to his bearded chin, then tightened his lip as though mentally preparing a speech, but too afraid to comply. She couldn't blame him. She argued since they met he hadn't talked much or shared a past before this chaos. Like her, he must have felt the same powerlessness and the fact that he as a man cannot do anything made him feel sick, sick enough to feel those words like vomit sought in his mouth. Despite the lack of introduction, trust was natural, as if they know each other for a long time. Perhaps the same trust fueled the cry that slipped out of his mouth. Her heart ached. They said dandelions bear the children's dreams, but how could they? He couldn't finish the sentence and offered himself a rueful laugh like he deserved all of this. My daughters love dandelions. They always ask me to bring home a handful every time I return home from work. His voice raised a pitch, immediately punching her achy heart. Her eyes turned scarlet and teary, but out of sheer will she swallowed those tears back to where they were. Her voice was steady when she spoke. Where are they? Guess, he said, wiping his eyes. Anticipating he would say more, she waited, speeding her mind with possibilities. She wanted to ask about his wife, his life before this, but no, maybe she wished she could speak more to get to know him better. Only to be disappointed when he gestured, telling her to get moving. A stifled sigh escaped her mouth as she sucked in a breath, preparing herself to welcome the agony, desperate for a distraction. She pierced her eyes at the man's back. Do you miss them? I do. His feet slowed, and out of nowhere he offered a genuine smile. The first genuine smile she saw, then suddenly retracted it. Perhaps those memories were too painful to swallow and relieve. She assumed nothing his fading smile. He didn't say anything since they reached the end of her hometown at least 200 meters above sea level. Looking over the once blossoming hometown, tears welled around her eyes. Wishing this was a dream, she could wake up. Lifting her face to the sky, streaks of orange and dark hues covered the sun. Slowly hiding behind the buildings, her heart ached even more. Thinking about how she survived, maybe if she were to die now, at least she realized something she would never forget. How precious his life was. Intangible but holy, holy enough to fight with all your might, with all your soul, without the people's strength. She wouldn't have been here without him. She doubted she could even achieve something she never thought she would greatly appreciate being alive. And by staying alive mean walking miles along hidden and trusting one another with their heart and soul on the line. It meant responsibility to keep the memories of their loved one alive, though they left their dead bodies behind. Reeling from the memories of her parents and baby brother who celebrated his first birthday last month, soft sobs sneaked out of her mouth. Her face soured as the unsolicited images of their previous trips to Disneyland flooded her brain. Imagine you waited a year for this trip, only to turn out the last civil thing you would do. After a time, she caught the man slowing down. Her feet stopped dead. Her eyes drowned in thick fear again. What is it? The only thing she could say with a strained voice, too soft even. Yet he caught it and hushed her, lifting his rifle in position. Tension spread evenly across their faces. There, here, go in the bush. He said in a loud whisper and grabbed her arm, dragging her behind the bushes. Be quiet. They're close, but I thought they wouldn't go out of the highway. She sat on bent knees, slowly feeling the warm, stabbing pain in her ankle. I thought so too, but it seems they're changing plans, so what should we do now? I don't know. What? Her eyes shook, her lips halted. Her breathing paused for a second, watching the green dandelions rolling across the street in misconfigured arrays. Like a thousand fluffy turtles in two different groups in a silent rampage, swallowing people they encountered. Some had golden yellow petals flowing through the air, silvery white seeds flying in miniature parachutes. To her knowledge, their extremely sensitive senses could detect anything human, and bullets were seeds on their skin.